And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We're allowed to say that now, aren't we? So look, thanks for coming out tonight. It's a bit dreary out there, but it's not so much dreary in here. It's lovely in here. And I want to say a massive thank you to Steph, to Soph, to... I don't know who Steph is. To Soph, there isn't a Steph. To Sophie, to Alex, to Laurie, and to Ella for the wonderful Christmas tree design. Thanks, Ella. And thanks to our band, which I think we're now going to call the Mistletones. It's fitting. It's all right. So there's something magical, isn't there, about Christmas? Do you find? Like I was just this afternoon, Laurie and I, my wife, we were at my family's Christmas day. It's our Christmas day today. We just ate and left, which is perfect for me. But as we came out, it had got dark and everybody's lights had come on, their houses. And we turned around the corner at one point and it was just blinding. Literally grabbed my sunglasses, put them on, pulled the visor down of the car and turned around as quickly as we could. But there is something uniquely magical about Christmas, isn't there? Whether it's the twinkling lights on the tree, I don't know whether we do this so much, but the candles flickering in the windows. Has anyone got flickering candles in windows, even fake ones? Some of you, yeah, some of you have got them. How about the glow of the fireplace? Like I literally started putting my log burner on in August, just in anticipation for that glow, right? You know, light is one of the symbols of Christmas, isn't it? And that's why our service this evening is entitled The Light of the World Christmas. And we've got this wonderful display. We've been singing about it. And, you know, whether we gather in our thousands, and I still haven't worked this out, why we do this, but we do. We seem to enjoy it. We gather in our thousands to watch someone switch the lights on. Like we wouldn't do that any other time of the year, would we? I'm going to switch the lights on. Let's advertise it. Ting! Yay! There's something magical about that at this time of year. We wrap meters and meters of fairy lights around every hanging place we can, draining the national grid as we do it. But it's wonderful, isn't it? But the question is, why do we do it? Why do we bother? Why does light resonate so deeply with us? What does it stir within us? Well, look, tonight I want to share a few thoughts on the claim that Jesus made about himself in John chapter 8, verse 12. And here's what Jesus said. He said this of himself. He said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." And before we get into it, that's a fairly extraordinary claim. I mean, for someone else to say that about him, you might pass off as being a little bit different, but Jesus claimed this of himself. And it's not just a claim for religious people or for one group, right? Because it's a universal claim. Jesus didn't say, I am a light. Jesus said, I am the light. And he's making a declaration that touches the deepest questions of our human existence. So let's unpack it a little bit together. And look, let's ask three questions. What does it mean that Jesus is the light of the world? Why do we need this light? And then how do we receive this light? So what does it mean that Jesus is the light of the world? Why do we need this light? And how do we receive this light? So firstly, what does it mean that Jesus is the light of the world? Well, to understand Jesus' words, we do have to remember the world in which Jesus lived when he was on earth. Light in biblical times, in Bible times, was a symbol of life. It was a symbol of truth. And it was a symbol of, probably most importantly, God's presence. Right back at the beginning of the Bible, in the opening verses, Genesis chapter 1. Some of you will know it. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Light was the very first thing that God created, because what you need for life is light. It's foundational. And so when Jesus says, I am the light of the world, he is making a crazy claim that he is the source of all spiritual life and truth. He's not saying that he's just one amongst other spiritual truths and other lives out there. He is saying that I uniquely am the source of all spiritual life and truth. But also, more than that, he's claiming something that probably the magnitude of it probably is lost on most of us. But in the first century, to the Jewish community that he was talking to, he would later get executed for blasphemy. And this was one of the phrases that got him in trouble. See, in the Old Testament, the presence of God is often described as light. Rooted in all of those Bible stories, and many of you will know, is the idea that wherever God is, light is. And you see that as a pattern, all in those stories that we read. You know, so if you remember, you may have seen the cartoon, The Prince of Egypt, right? And God, that's just a story, a Bible story. God appeared to Moses, and he appeared as a fire, as light. When the Israelites were nomadic and they wandered around the Sinai desert, God appeared to them in a pillar of bright fire, again as light. When they built the tabernacle, this building where they could go and worship God, and then later the temple, the presence of God was this blinding light of God's glory. And so it's not lost on Jesus' hearers when Jesus says, I am the light of the world, that he's referring to the Old Testament. He's referring to this idea that what he's claiming is that God has come. God is here in Jesus. Jesus isn't saying, I'm just a teacher. Jesus isn't saying, I'm a prophet. Like there were loads of people claiming to be Messiah in the first century when Jesus was around. But Jesus says, I'm the source of all spiritual life and truth and the very presence of God. And that's a pretty breathtaking claim that we can't ignore. Okay, so why do we need this light? Well, this is a little bit of a downer on a lovely evening, but let's face it. We live in a world that seems to be dominated by darkness. Not obviously tonight, yes. But our world is dominated by darkness, isn't it? Not just physical darkness, although again, I don't know about you, but I get so depressed leaving for work in the morning and it's dark, and then coming home at night and it's still dark, and you're like, was there daytime at all? Like you just don't leave the office and it's like it was dark and it's still dark. Is it ever going to get light? Actually, the good news is it from today? The days are going to get longer. That's worth happiness about. But anyway, I digress. It's not just about physical darkness. It's more than physical darkness. It's moral darkness. It's emotional darkness. It's spiritual darkness. We can't help but feel a little down and hopeless, can we, when we see some of the brokenness around us? And we've all been affected by it by one way or another, haven't we? Like, you know, you turn on the news and you see what happened yesterday in the German market. And you can't help but feel grieved by that, can we? In a moment, we're going to hear from Natalia, a lady who is here with us for a little while from Ukraine. And she's going to be doing one of our Bible readings for us. And we can't help but feel sad when we see what's happening in Ukraine or we see what's happening in Israel. And sometimes it's actually easier for us to turn on the news and watch it and feel aggrieved and then turn off the news and think it doesn't affect us. But we all know that actually this darkness lives a little bit closer to home, doesn't it? You know, while there are wars that rage out there, we've all been affected in some way by families that break apart, growing loneliness, acts of injustice. And if we're honest, we see darkness not just out there, not just in close proximity, but oftentimes also within ourselves. The anger that we can't shake, the selfishness that we can't overcome, and the anxiety that eats away at our peace. And the Bible collectively puts all of those things together and calls this darkness sin. It's simply the outcome of having no light. It's the outcome of being detached from the light. But here's the thing. We're not very good at admitting that, are we? Like, it's much easier for me to say when someone says, "Hey, Simon, how are you?" "I'm fine," than actually speak the truth. We try to manage the darkness ourselves. We think, you know what, if I can just be successful, if I can just find love, if I can just be true to myself, I'll find the light. But you know, those things, as good as they may be, are like shadows of the light. A guy called Francis Schaeffer illustrates this brilliantly when he writes about how our culture borrows from Christianity's view of human value and dignity, even doing so whilst rejecting the source. And he talks about how there are shadows, things that look like the real thing, but they're just the image of the real thing. And so take, for example, our view on human rights, which owes so much to the Christian idea that every person is made with God-likeness in them, that there is some kind of sanctity in us. And so the question is, why do we have this idea? Where did that come from, and what purpose does it solve? Why do we have this idea that humans, regardless of status, gender, or race, have inherent worth and dignity? Like, where has that come from, and what use is it to me? Without God, it's hard to explain why human life matters or why we should care for the vulnerable. And however bold our claim might be about life's ultimate meaninglessness, our lives actually betray us. Because we daily engage in creating shadows, don't we? We pursue love, and we pursue justice and beauty and learning. Why? Simply because there is a true light that we all need and want, but we don't know how to get it. So we settle for shadows. Shadows that don't satisfy. And this is actually the claim that Jesus is making. Jesus says, "I am the light of the world. And whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." So, okay, then how do we receive this light? Well, look, the good news of Christmas is that Jesus didn't leave us in the dark. He entered into our darkness. Now think about that just for a moment. The creator of the universe was born as a baby. He was wrapped in cloths and laid in an animal's feeding trough. The good news, that is the good news. The good news is that he was eventually executed, and he claimed that in doing so he carried the sin of the world. Which is why then on the cross, the gospel writers tell us there's something like a solar eclipse took place, and the place became dark as a sign that the light of the world had gone out. Why? Well, to bring us, or to bring his light to us. But here's the catch. We have to respond. Jesus said, "Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." So it's an invitation for all. The word "whoever" is a universal invitation. Follow me means more than admiration or agreeance. It means more than coming to church once a year for a Christmas carol service. We're all grateful that you did, by the way. It means committing to him. It means living in alignment with his ways. And in a culture that often promotes self-reliance, Jesus invites us to depend on him. And so as we celebrate Christmas, let's not just admire the lights around us. Let's look to the true light, Jesus Christ. He is the light that overcomes darkness, the light that gives hope and life. And the promise is sure. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Now let's spend some time in prayer, and Bill is going to come and pray for us. Thank you, Bill.